it's recording.
I'm Randy. I don't like to be cool.
We are really loud. Is that normal?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's usually zoomed out like this so it doesn't look like that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna tell you a thing I was thinking about earlier today. Oh, brain, don't fail me now. You got this. You see the smoke coming out of my ears?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, God. I was like, oh, it'd be a great thing to talk about for the podcast.
Randy's random
Thought of the day. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, you have to finish it. You can't just end it on that. Thank God my phone is charged so I can actually look up one.
Oh, my God. Do you have... Oh, you're using your charger?
I am. Everything always dies because all of my technology is old. I refuse to update my phone and I refuse to get new stuff.
Oh, what percent am I at? 21%? That'll probably get me home.
You don't have a charger in your car?
No, I
That's
switched.
a
I just
mistake.
switched cars back.
That's a mistake.
Yeah, I don't know if he took the plug in there, if I took the plug in there out and he just had his own that he brought. I don't know. I just got to find a plug for it.
Randy's random. I'm sorry. I sometimes just get that theme song like stuck in my head.
It's
the
good.
Simplest theme song. But like sometimes I'll just be sitting at home and be Randy's random.
I think it's some people have told us that like, oh, you should just like record it, like get a recording of one and then play it. I'm like, nah, I like
we
singing
sing it every time.
Every time. That's how we do it. You don't like it? Come back next week and maybe we'll change it if you complain. Like,
if you complain. Okay, so I said I was going to go on my list in order, but I'm not. I'm just going to go with whichever one I think is the most interesting for today. So I've been really on like an astrology kick recently.
Oh, dude, I love astrology. It's so fake.
It's so fake. I'm sorry, it's so fake. But here's the thing. So I'm just going to read what I have written down because that's what I just need to do instead of trying to get my thoughts together. Okay. Do people's positions in space matter? Like some people believe that where the stars and planets are determines our fate and our future and the way that we act. So does people's place in space matter? The fact that today we can travel hundreds or thousands of miles within hours is incredible, and no human has done that in the history of humanity before. Could your place in space impact our lives? Like if you have terrible luck living in Ireland, if you moved to Canada, could it be possible your luck would get better?
Well, check the horoscopes.
But you get what I'm like the question that I'm asking?
Yeah, it's like, well, and that's like, I think that's like part of string theory.
Is it really?
I think so. It's like your
cool.
placement in space, does that change? Like, because the idea of quantum and string theory is like the probability of existence, you know, being itself or whatever. And so it's just, but like, does your place in space change what your like your probability to have good or a better life?
I don't want to say like does it change your future, because obviously living in a different place will change your future, change what you'll do in that place depending on a different place. But does it impact you like I guess with luck or like with I don't know, something else that's like abstract with your health? I guess health is also another one that's like proven, because if you live in the mountains that's like cleaner air or something. So yeah, it affects your health. I don't know. Do you get, like...
Yeah.
But, like, people think, like, oh, because the Pluto was in that sector of the space when I was born, and so that means that I am going to be stubborn or whatever. Like...
Fucking...
You're not the correct person to ask because you don't believe in astrology.
Not at all. It makes me so mad when girls are like, I'm not religious, but base their entire perception of people off of like an ancient Babylonian star god or something like that. It's like, I have friends that are super into horoscopes and super into astrology, and I'm like, you know, believe what you want to believe. Good for you. I get a kick out of it. Like I have fun listening to it because you're like, oh, you're gonna be this because you're that, or like you're such a Libra for doing that.
You're such a Libra.
And I'm like that's, but they're all such blanket statements. I could be any one of those people at any point in time.
That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just trying to pinpoint someone's personality based on something solely out of their control is not possible. I believe, nature versus nurture. Still up for debate for me because I think there's a bit of both in that because I've studied like psychology and I've done stuff and be it whatnot, blah, blah, blah. But I think that, I don't think the stars' positions have anything to do with the way that your brain reacts chemically to certain situations.
I guess you're right.
So
I don't know. Just thought it was interesting because I drive so much, guys. I drive like 50 miles a day going back and forth between work.
Same.
And so I'm like, is my like position in space? Like, well, think about it because like the whole like humanity, like our whole like history of humanity, we've never been able to move as quickly and as far as we have like ever. Like our way ancestors, would take them years and years to like cross across America or something. But we can do it now in like 3 hours. Like that has to affect us somehow.
It affects our perception of the size and scale of the world around us.
I guess.
I think because the idea that I could get from California to New York in a matter of probably 6 hours, maybe less, like that changes my perception of the size of the place.
Yeah.
Because I'm passing over it so quickly, but there's also people that have been to space and seen the scope of the size of the moon up close.
Don't even get me started with space travel. Like those people are like thousands and thousands of miles from Earth. What are they experiencing?
Zero gravity.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. You got that one right.
Oh, you nailed it on the head, dog. That one's great.
But like, haven't you heard like people who like, I don't think our brains were meant to comprehend how big the Earth is, and like people, astronauts who go out in space and they see the Earth, like they say like their brains, like they can't like fathom it. Like it's just not like they've changed because they've seen the whole scope of the Earth.
It's like the idea of like, do bugs pay attention to us?
Sure. Yeah.
Sometimes some do, but like when you think about ants are all in their own little ant world doing their ant thing. Like they can't think about the size of the world that they're on. They can barely think about anything.
Okay, the way you rolled your eyes at that. Okay.
Well, because I just like mid thought of that sentence, I was like, well, what if there's the idea of the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension and so on and so forth. Like fourth dimensional beings, like we literally can't comprehend them.
Yeah.
So like my brain was just breaking for a moment because
like,
I was like,
what if we're the ants?
What if we're the ants and there's something bigger than us? There's some theory out there that our universe is a ball, right? And someone holds on to that ball, our God, right? Or our perception of a higher being controlling that. Well, then the idea of parallel universes exists, right? Well, then there's parallel gods, and so like so there's not one person controlling everything. It would be each universe contains its own god, and that god holds our universe in its palm, but then some other god has other ideas and does this thing with, it's just that perception of like, okay, but then do they all have do they have their own world? Where do they live? How do they live? And like are there gods controlling those gods? Just like the sheer scope of
Nope.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Randy's random thought of the day. Wow, that was interesting. This is Media for the Intellectually Impoverished. I'm Taylor.
I'm Randy.
And this is the podcast that
enriches your mediocre lives.
I don't think we've ever started with a Randy's random thought.
We haven't. That's the first time, and I'm happy because I wanted to get you a random. I have too many on my phone.
I have too many thoughts.
I have too many. I just thought of another one today, but you're not getting two in one episode.
You don't get two in one.
You don't get two in one episode. You have to wait to the next one.
What are we talking about today, Randaloni?
We're talking about biographical media.
Biographical media.
I mean, that's what I'm calling it. I mean, depending on if it's a book, it's a biography. If it's like a movie, they're called biopics. I don't know what you call it for a video game.
Biographical video game.
Biographical video
I
game.
think that's the only
But I just, when I
term.
wrote down what we were going to talk about, I just put biographical media.
I think it's a good blanket statement. That fits. It fits. So, what is biographical media?
So I wrote down, what I mean by that is just things that are based on true events or real people.
There you go.
That's all I wrote down.
Yeah, so...
Which is such a big, like, blanket of...
Because I think that more specifically, it has to do with an individual and the story of an individual.
Okay.
Because otherwise we could include, like, history. History is not biographical, right? Those don't mesh. I would say...
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, I think history is a history piece of media, or a piece about history. But there's specifically a biography would have to narrow that down to the story of a person.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, because I was thinking...
It's so rare. It's so rare that I hear those words from you that I am very...
I've said it multiple times. If you want to hear it, just go find another episode on the podcast. I mean,
listen, I'm just stupid.
But because I was thinking, is it biographical? It's not autobiographical, because autobiographical would be you telling your story or the person telling their story.
Yes.
But biographical, so it's not. Yeah, that's what makes it different from history. But couldn't have a group of people and that be biographical? I guess not.
No, I don't think so.
That'd be an event.
That'd be a story, because it pertains to multiple people. Biographical bio means living. Graphical means, I thought one of them meant one for a second, and my brain was like, yeah, one of those means one.
Nope.
Right? Nope. Means life and story. So, I'm gonna go back to my stupid hole.
There you go. Good job. Good job. That tracks, because I wrote down a list. I'll get to it. I have a flow. I actually have kind of like a script that I want to go through.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was not working today. I was not working.
I hope your boss doesn't listen to the podcast.
He doesn't.
I hope your boss isn't outside in his office 2 doors down.
He's not in his office. But I walked into work and I just started watching a movie.
Dude, I wish I could do that. Come on.
I mean, there are other people who listen to this podcast who will give me credit for working. Please, I did do work. I was working while watching the movie. Don't take my credit away, please.
No, please keep me paid.
Please, I did work while I watched the movie.
I think by the time this goes out, it'll have been past the time you'll be working.
Okay,
there.
cool, good. No, yeah, I watched a movie. There was nothing to do. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna go first. Is there anything you want to say else about biographical?
Yeah, no, I think I covered it. It's a bio means life, not one.
Bio means life.
Which one's one? What's the prefix that means one?
I was about to say uno.
Uno. Bro, it's an unographical piece.
Isn't it like omni or something? Or doesn't it begin with O?
It's gotta be uno.
Mono.
You were close.
We're so fucking dumb. We are so dumb.
Listen, just because we have a podcast doesn't make us like any more intelligent than any of you guys.
We're not English majors.
No, we make video games and movies and draw stuff. Like, I think that's what our selling point is, that we're not smart. We just know a couple of things.
I was like, we don't know anything.
Like, we know 1 or 2 things. And prefixes is not on that list.
Prefixes is not one of them. It's not one of the things that we know. It's mono. What is omni? Does that mean multiple?
Yeah, right? Because an omnivore eats all
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, omnivore eats both meat and
but yeah.
Herbivore.
No, an herbivore eats herbs.
Plants.
So
omnivore eats everything.
Yeah, well, when you think everything, then my brain's like, well, he doesn't eat the dirt.
Oh my god. Taylor, go.
Okay, fine. Okay, whatever.
This is Randy's podcast now. Taylor, come back. Oh, it's locked. The door's locked. You look so sad.
Tell your thing.
Okay. So I came up with a couple of questions just to think about as I go through my whole like spiel and my whole script. So in the last episode that you guys heard, we talked about story and we focused heavily on how to tell your story. And so with a biographical piece of media or biographical story, how do you tell someone else's story?
Or if it's autobiographical, how do you tell specifically your story?
Like now we're talking your life, like your story.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking autobiographical?
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, why did you bring up that?
I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
I don't know. Because I'm stupid. Listen, I'll go back to the stupid hole. Like, you can continue.
Okay. So how do you tell someone else's story? What compels you to tell someone else's story, and how to do it truthfully? So what I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to have to go into the entire story, so I'm going to try and make it quick. I won't bore you guys, and you should go watch the movie. But I'm going to be talking about The Imitation Game. Have you seen it?
I did. I watched it this morning.
Oh, cool. When I watched it?
Yeah. What time did you watch it?
9 to 11. When I first came into work.
Yeah, I watched it from 10 to noon.
Oh, so, 1 hour off.
Yeah.
1 hour.
You were at the end when I was at the beginning.
Exactly.
How did you watch it? Because I couldn't find it on any streaming services.
I got it on Amazon Prime. I paid for it like a good legal person.
Yeah, cool. We'll just say that you paid for it for both of us, because I definitely didn't. And I mean didn't pirate it off of a website for free. But just so you know, apparently there's a lot of hot single moms in my area.
Stop it! Okay, good. You actually watched it, so a lot of everything that I'm going to say is going to make sense.
I'm very desired in my area, apparently.
Okay, so The Imitation Game is about the main character, I guess, now that we've decided that a biographical media is about one person, is about Alan Turing. And it's... The movie tells his story of being hired by British kind of like Secret Service or military.
Hired by the British Navy to decode the
Enigma.
The Enigma machine.
Which is used by Germany at the time to code their messages and where their U-boats and is it U-boats or wherever their boats and military
U-boats
was.
And where their airstrikes would be. Mm-hmm. It was at the time the most advanced cryptographic machine to date.
Yeah.
So he was hired by the Navy to help solve that and decode the messages.
So just a little synopsis. I'm going to dive deeper into everything, but brief, Alan Turing is known as the father of computer science and the father of artificial intelligence. But so the basic plot of the movie is he's hired by the British Navy to find a way to decrypt this Enigma code. He goes on to work with a team of like other special like cryptographers or crypto.
Yeah. A couple of linguists.
Yeah.
And other like mathematicians
mathematic people.
Yeah.
And Turing's idea is to make a machine to decrypt, right?
Yeah,
That's the right word. To solve the Enigma.
Good one.
And because at this point they're doing it like by hand, man is trying to figure it out, and he's like, that's not ever gonna work. No man is powerful enough to figure out this machine. We need to make a machine for it. So he goes on to make a machine, and eventually they solve how to get it to work and make it quick enough because the codes change every day. And along the way, you find out that he's a homosexual. And at this time in England, it is very illegal to be a homosexual, and you will get fined and put in prison or have to take special...
Be chemically castrated.
Yeah, be chemically castrated. And you find out that he's a homosexual. And now because of this, he has to hide who he is. And he goes on to like get married or like to get engaged with the woman that he's working with, also to help her to stay in the program. You find out that there's like a Russian spy who's like a Soviet Union spy who's infiltrated their ranks and is also trying to decrypt the Enigma. And they think that it's Turing, but it's not him. It's another guy. And we figure out who that guy is. And then he's trying to blackmail Turing by saying, oh, I know you're homosexual. If you tell them my secret, I'm going to tell them yours. And you're going to get like imprisoned. All this to say, at the end, the machine finally works, and when it does, the spoilers, please go watch it. It's a great film.
I feel like we've hit all the spoilers on the way, but yeah.
What do you mean all the spoilers
There's
on the way?
There's a lot of spoilers.
I mean, like, obviously, they're gonna figure out how to get the machine to work.
You don't know yet.
We won the war. What do you mean? No, we didn't get the machine to work, no. No.
It was the face you get. I wish you were like, give me like this perturbed, or I don't know, just like, what are you talking about face? It was like, we won the war.
We know how it ends. Like, we know that they must have figured out something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Anyways,
you know what? Resident stupid hole is gonna go back.
The hardest thing about the movie is the thing that I found the hardest was that they decrypted the Enigma and then they couldn't tell anybody that they did it, because if Germany found out that they would have immediately changed the way they were crypting their messages, updated the way they were using the Enigma, the machine, and so they'd have to go through the whole process of decrypting it again or decoding it again. So they then had to spend the rest of the war tactfully putting their armies and navy and air forces in specific places to where they could defeat the Nazis in Germany without letting them know that they knew exactly where they were at all times. It's very hard because there's one scene where they know that a bomb is, or like the boats are about to destroy a convoy full of like 500 citizens, and they can't do anything to stop it, because if they do, Germany will find out that they know where everybody is. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to watch. And finally, like, the ending of it is found out that Alan Turing is a homosexual, and instead of going to prison, he chooses to be chemically castrated, which he has to take medicine, estrogen, that hurts him. And he ends up losing his intellect, which is something that he really valued. I think he does. And I say because at the very end, the woman that he was his fiance, who they eventually break up, they don't ever actually get married, but she gives him a crossword puzzle and was like, here, let's do a crossword puzzle. That always cheers you up. And he just sits there and he can't do it.
No, it was because his hand was shaking.
I think it was because he couldn't solve it.
Oh, well, either way.
Anyways, he can't, it's very sad by the end. So that's the main idea of the plot of the movie. Now, I did a lot of research and found the true story of Alan Turing.
All right.
And so that's because that's what this is about. Like, how do you tell somebody else's story? How do you do you tell it truthfully? How much of the truth do you tell? How much of it do you need to embellish to make it a good story, to make it compelling, to make it watchable, entertaining? Because not every aspect of someone's life is fun.
Yeah, I think this is my bit when I watched the Conjuring series recently, which is a delightful series of horror movies. So good. But they're all based on true stories, and it's I love to point out at the point when it's like, oh, this is when it becomes based on and no longer a true story, because it's just, it's a horror movie. Things got to get outlandish at the climax,
But I've told you, the very first movie, The Conjuring 1, that was completely based, because they had Lorraine Warren there every step of the way telling the story, and they actually had to tone that story down because what actually happened was too gruesome for television.
Yeah.
Or for the movies.
For the movies, whatever.
Anyways, okay, so everything that I said, I went and I as I was watching the movie, I asked questions like, okay, how real is this aspect of the movie? How real is this? And everything. So I'm going to run through them, tell you which is true and which is false and what actually happened, everything. I'm trying to get through this as quick as I can, okay?
We can do it. I believe in you.
Because I think this is important to show.
Yeah, well, for this, just go. We're
okay.
good.
So one of Turing's best friends in school was a guy named Christopher, who he actually had a crush on. In the film, we see that he never actually got to tell him that he loved him before Christopher passed away. And there's a scene where he goes into the headmaster's office and he's like, yeah, your friend is dead. And he's like, oh, he wasn't my friend. I never knew him, even though he's torn up inside. So how true is that? Did he have a friend named Christopher? Yes, he did have a friend named Christopher. He did love him. He did know that he was going to die, though. He knew that he was sick, and he knew that the time, the ending of his life was coming because he had tuberculosis, and he knew to say his goodbyes. So they exaggerated that bit in the movie. His friend Christopher is also what led him to pursue math and the computer, machine sciences. because Christopher had also been interested in it. You have Joan Clark. Joan? I think her name was Joan. Joan Clark. Was she actually hired into the program because she was a woman, and that was a big deal of her getting hired and her being a woman? Yes, she was actually hired, but she didn't have to crack any of like the crossword puzzles that they showed in the movie. Her professor at the university that she was at actually got her into the program, so she needed help from a male to get into all-male program.
That time, it's feasible. I mean, it's just how it was back then.
So then the proposal between Alan Turing and Joan Clark, they actually did get engaged, and they were very close friends. And there's a scene where he comes out to her and he's like, "I'm a homosexual, like you can't marry me." And she's like, "Yeah, I know." Like,
yeah, it's not that hard to figure out.
But in the moment, you're so scared for him because like, is she gonna like turn him in? Is she gonna hate him? And she's like, "No, like you're my friend," and she still wants to get married. She's like, "Yeah, like we'll be a different kind of husband and wife. We won't have like the romantic relationship, but we'll have like our intellectual like conversations, and we'll like all of these things." All of that was true.
Really?
I was really shocked that all of that is true. They didn't actually ever get married, but they were engaged for a time, and she knew that he was homosexual and went along with it and just let it be. The name of the machine, when Turing finally makes the machine and gets it working, he calls it Christopher, his old friend in grade school. The machine was not actually named Christopher. It was named Victory. Or they have two names for it. It's Bombay or Victories, either one that they went by.
I think they called it Project Bombay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But it says that they nicknamed the machine Victory. There are spies. People keep accusing people of being spies, Soviet Union spies. That never happened in real life. There was, as far as they know, as far as I could find on the internet, nobody ever said there was spies infiltrating the program. But it did say that Turing never hid spies from the government. I thought that was very interesting, the way that they phrased that. So it makes it sound like there were spies, but he ratted them out. Like every time he found one, he was like, that guy over there's a spy.
Oh, yeah.
He's a spy. Get him.
Sick him.
Him being homosexual and the treatments, all of that was true. In the movie, they make a big deal about him, like, hiding from the police, or kind of like him coming in and being questioned and them having to get it out of him that he's a homosexual. That didn't happen. He confessed as soon as they like started questioning him. He wrote a 5-page paper and he was like, "Yeah, I'm gay. What are you gonna do about it? Huh?
Chemically castrate you." Huh? Poor guy.
I know. This is something that wasn't in the movie, but when I was doing research, they actually filmed this scene, but they didn't leave it in. So Alan Turing, sadly, committed suicide after 2 years of being on the chemical castration. He couldn't, obviously it was killing him, and he couldn't take it. Unfortunate to say. They did film that scene, but the writers and producers and everyone decided not to leave that in the final movie, and end the movie on a happy note of Joan Clark coming back to Turing and telling him, like, "You're loved, and you should love who you are and your intellect and the person that you are." And there's this quote that they constantly say throughout the movie, like, it's those who, I have the line written down somewhere. It's those who no one imagines anything of who do the unimaginable. Like, and I love that. And so that's how the movie ends. And they did that purposefully because Alan Turing, it's known that he had felt alone most of his life and felt unloved and felt like he was an outcast. And so they wanted to end the movie on that note, that he was loved, in honor of him, to give him that, like, look how much you did for us. Because of the machine that he created, we did go on to make computers. This is why we have computers today, is because of what Alan Turing did in his lifetime and during World War II. So they wanted to honor him that way. As I was doing research, there was some parts where it said that he did not create a machine. And so I had to go through and find how true it was that he actually decrypted the Enigma code. He did create a machine, but it wasn't like the first machine that he ever created. We've talked about Turing before in the Turing test, which is the test that determines whether something is a machine or human. To tell, like, it has to do with artificial intelligence. Before that, he created the Turing machine, which was used to help. I'm going to try and put it in the simplest terms. It was made to try and find a single method of mathematics that would be able to simplify the mathematics that we have so that humans could solve it. So trying to find like an overall kind of formula that we could break down math into, that so our human brains could figure them out. It's called a Turing machine. I don't know how successful it was. I don't think it was, because he went on to create an actual machine that could do the computing. And then he wrote the first programming manual that was used for the Mark I, the first marketable electronic digital computer. Isn't that so interesting?
That's pretty interesting.
Why was none of that in the movie?
Well, I mean, because the movie was about the World War.
It was about the war. I know. But so just take, I know I said a lot and I went through everything fast, but try to take into account everything that was true and wasn't true. So they added spies, obviously, because World War II, spies.
Oh, spies. You
gotta have spies. I mean, they needed more intrigue. There needed to be a problem, right?
Because I mean, the war's not enough of a problem.
I was about to say the war's not enough of a problem.
They needed more instances in between the actual events. Something
that's affecting him personally. Yeah. That's like, because the war affects everybody, and it's this big thing. And they needed something, an element in the story that was personally affecting him.
Yeah, because he is the one accused of being the spy for the majority of the movie. Yeah. Until you find out who it was, and you're like, "Whoa, it was that guy."
So they added spies. They played him as a coward. I feel like he was in.
No, I think they played him as. Honestly, to me, he seemed autistic. Did you not catch that vibe?
I did, and I didn't look into that. I meant to. I don't know if he was actually like on the spectrum. But I mean, in other ways, like when it came to the spies, like he was manipulated into like keeping silent that he knew who the Soviet Union spy was. And the fact that when he was like being questioned by the police in real life, he immediately confessed. But in the movie, they had him like hold back. And like in some places, I feel like they made him look weaker than he was.
Yeah, I mean,
or more like reserved, I guess. Like not as bravos as like he was in real life.
Yeah, there's some speculation. I'm seeing some speculation that he had Asperger's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing, the consensus is that at that time there was no formal way for him to be diagnosed, but because it just wasn't.
There was no tests or anything for it.
But a lot of researchers that have looked into his life and his lifestyle and his patterns through accounts and such have basically come to the same conclusion that it's likely he was autistic on the spectrum or had Asperger's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I caught that vibe.
Oh no, I mean they very heavily like they lean into that, and they talk about how he's very like arrogant and antisocial and everything. So they're definitely leaning into the fact that he is on the spectrum somehow.
And it's not even just like the way that people describe him; it's his actions and the way certain things that he does, like his stuttering and stuff like that, and his
lack of eye contact. I mean, there's
lack
a
of
lot
eye contact
things.
and his general like
demeanor
and inability to understand social cues. I think that's very much like from people that my mom's a special ed teacher, so I've encountered a lot of people with Asperger's and a lot of people with autism. Like that's very much like a symptom, I would say, or just something that happens a lot.
Again, because I'm just kind of looking over, because I made a chart so I could go through these things quickly. I do think they played him off like weaker. So I said the spies, and I said about when being a homosexual. Again, when it came to proposing to Joan, in the movie, he kept it till the very end of their engagement to tell her that he was a homosexual. In real life, he told her at the very beginning before they got engaged. So again, they seem to play him off as kind of hiding.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the reason that the movie did that was because he wanted a reason to get her out of there, because one of the guys was
right.
like,
yeah, you're right.
The big espionage MI6 guy was like, oh, we captured her for treason. She's in the jail, and then he was afraid that they would use her against him in real life because the MI6 guy was lying.
Yeah.
And so he was like, oh, I'm homosexual. He's just giving her any reason to leave him.
To get her to go
away.
In the
movie, whereas in real life,
no,
she knew.
And then when it came to Joan Clark, I mean, They do it to be inclusive. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, for her becoming like her being part of the team, like they made it like women empowerment, and they give her tests in the movie, and like she has to solve a crossword puzzle, and it's like do it in 6 minutes, and she does it in 5 minutes, and it's like showing that like, oh, don't underestimate the power of women.
Oh, yeah. Now I see it. At first I was like, I don't really know, like, because I didn't pick up that vibe a whole lot, but I get where you're coming from. Yeah.
And even then, like, she still has to hide the fact that she's working for them. Like, she still has to, like, she's actually staying in the house of, like, the secretaries and everything, while Turing at night comes and sneaks in and gives her, like, the codes and the new, like, advancements that they've made, because she's a woman.
Eventually, though, they just scrap that idea altogether.
And they just put her in, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
like,
I don't know where that went. Yeah, when did that happen?
I don't know either. It just, at some point, she's just, like, there with them from then on.
Yeah.
And it's not a problem anymore.
You're right. That is
That's
interesting.
Weird.
Okay, I'll quickly wrap up. I hope.
I have some questions though.
Oh, go ahead. I thought you were going to change to your topic.
No. What measures did they use to tell his story in an intriguing way, like through the movie? Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Like, because we're talking a lot about the story and how it differed from the, what real life. But like, what other than like embellishing things, what methods do they use to tell his story in an interesting light? Like, how did they take a real life story and turn it into something interesting other than just like embellishing? Like cinematically, what are some things that you think they did? Do you not understand the question?
I do, but like embellishment is like the biggest thing that you can do when you're telling someone's story and make it interesting.
So,
but like cinematically, like the
maybe like the pacing of the story or stuff like that.
Oh, I mean, they told his whole life story, like because they were constantly cutting back from different times. So they were cutting from his childhood to him actually during the war and trying to solve the enigma, and him after the war, or not after the war, but towards the end of the war when he was under suspicion for being a homosexual. And so they're cutting between those lines.
Yeah, so like nonlinear kind of stuff.
Nonlinear,
I did like that a lot.
I did like it a lot too.
You just love anything that's nonlinear.
I love anything that's nonlinear. I think that's such a great form of storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I think it fits the story a lot because as it goes on, like in the beginning of the movie, but you're not really picking up on a whole lot of like vibes that maybe he's homosexual. I thought it was funny to me because the beginning of the movie, I was like, oh yeah, war movie, and then as it went on, I was like, whoa, now it's like a gay pride movie. I'm like, whoa, like yeah, flip the switch on me, like I didn't see it. To me, it was such an unexpected twist to me. I was like, whoa, and then I was like, yeah. Anyway,
no, I mean,
I go back to the stupid hole real quick.
No, it's an interesting change, a shift in tone, definitely, because you're not so much worried. See, because that's why I'm saying like them cracking the code isn't like such a big thing. Like it was gonna happen. Like they made a movie about him making this machine. Like I feel like at some point you have to like realize just as a storyteller like that they're gonna solve that problem. Like there's gonna be something else that's gonna come up, and that's gonna be the bigger problem.
But as I was saying before, that I like the as the movie paces along, you start to see more of these things that are like, oh, maybe he's homosexual, but until like the final like turning point.
Is there something else I can help with?
Did you say Siri?
I didn't say that. Shut up, Siri. Did I say?
I don't know. I honestly don't.
Until you finally get that twist around the time when you see him propose to the girl that he likes. And then it's like at that juncture, you see him propose to the girl that he likes. And then it goes back in time to when he's a kid and he's writing a note for his friend Christopher that says, I love you, but it's encoded.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was like, what? Because honestly, I had no idea up until that point that he might have been. I
mean, this is. I can't say because this isn't my first time watching it. I do think I was shocked when it actually happened. I mean, because I watched it, I knew it was going to happen. But, so the storytelling, I like the non-linearness of it, and that's a really quick way, especially if you're going to be talking about someone's life, someone's story. It's a very quick way to get their whole life story in, and you can cut out a lot of like the stuff that doesn't really, because we don't really know what happens to him after Christopher dies. Like he just
I mean, we know he goes and studies mathematics, and then he goes to teach as a professor.
That's basically and so we don't need to know all of that story, that in between, and then we don't I mean, we didn't know. The movie doesn't talk about at the end of his life. It ends on a happy note.
I mean, it does have like the text at the end that's like telling you the things that happened, like typical biopics, where it's like, well, he died because of suicide. These are the things that he did. It was like the Queen pardoned him.
Oh yeah.
Posthumously. I think the most important thing about like a biopic, especially this one, is like honoring the memory of the person.
Yes,
who
definitely.
lived, you know.
It's, and I wrote like, so what compels, this is my finishing thoughts, is in the question I asked at the beginning, what compels you to tell someone else's story? And you can tell someone else's story through your own lens and kind of take your creative liberty with it, but ultimately you want to honor that person, like you were just saying. And you want to give people who otherwise didn't have a voice. You want to speak for them and share their story and show, especially like I had never known this before I had watched the movie, how impactful Alan Turing had been in our society today. I mean, without him, we probably would not have computers, or at least the type of computers that we have today. They'd be a lot different, or we might, like in 2021, we might just start having computers. Like it could have just taken longer for us to get that kind of technology. So we have a lot to thank for him. And I certainly wouldn't have known that without a movie about him.
I knew of him. I knew he existed because, like I said, I took a bunch of computer science classes back in high school. But, you know, we studied like the foundation of computer science. So I knew of him. I didn't know his story, though. And so like seeing his story for like full scale, like was really interesting. So.
Sorry, I was so long. But that's the whole episode right there.
Boom. We can quickly touch on mine. I didn't have a whole lot to speak on it because when we talk about like biographical video games, that is such an interesting topic. It's such an out there topic.
It's niche.
And very niche. But it was interesting to me to know that there is at least a 50 of them, because I saw a top 50 on like IMDb or something.
Cool.
To be fair, one of them in the top 10 was the Beatles rock band. So I'm not
saw
quite
that.
sure how valid this list is. But it does have, a couple of games. And the one that I chose to talk about was this game called The Beginner's Guide, which was developed by Everything Unlimited, and directed by Davey Reedon. Oh shoot, I looked up for his name. Davey Reedon. I'm just gonna say Reedon. Who is the creator of the Stanley Parable? Have you ever played the Stanley Parable?
Oh yeah, I love the Stanley Parable.
And that's a beautiful game. But this game is not about what the fuck is his name? Davey.
The fuck is his name?
This story is not about Davey. This story is about his friend. So what the Beginner's Guide is, it's a compilation of his friend. I wrote his name down. His friend Coda. He's got this friend named Coda who's been developing games, but he'd never released his games. He just sort of developed them for himself. And what Davey did is he went in and he gathered all of his games and everything that he created and compiled them into this interactive sort of look into his friend Coda's psyche and his life. And you get to play these games, or play, what of them you could, and watch his psyche develop and just get like a really, really, it's such an interesting look into someone's brain, such a creative mind's brain.
I mean, you'll have to remind me, because I watched it a while ago and I do remember really enjoying it. But you see like the levels as he develops these different like games, or in this one giant game they feel like levels, and they start off like not the best and they get better and they become more complicated and more like just better, like developed and like fully developed is
fleshed
out. But then slowly you see them start to devolve again until like it's very simplistic,
minimalistic.
It's very minimalistic.
Yeah, and it's Davey narrates it along the game. So as you're going through this game and seeing what Coda has created, Davey is telling you, because you get to see both the game and you get to hear Davey's interpretation of what the game may mean about Coda.
Okay, yeah.
And so you've got games, and the beginning is just like a Rainbow Six Siege, which is a shooter video game that had a big modding community. He created his own map, but it was like initially it was just a little strange. Like he just added some blotches of color and a couple of textures that weren't really supposed to be there in floating boxes. Then you go further into his game and you see he has this one puzzle that he uses a lot where there's these 2 doors and a small sort of corridor between them. And you have to open one door and then go inside, and while you're closing the door again, and then on the back side of the first door, there is another lever to open the second door. And that in and of itself repeats almost hundreds of times throughout his course of game making. That one puzzle, and it's the same assets. And by what I mean by that is it's the same piece of thing in the virtual world. It's the same exact looking door. It's not just like, you know, when you're at a school and you see all of the same doors, it's that kind of idea in a virtual world, I guess.
Okay.
But as the games continue to grow in complexity, those doors stay the same and they look the same. And I always thought that was really interesting. As time goes on, like you said, they start to evolve and you start to get more complex stories. And there's some games, he includes sort of this chat mechanic where you talk to the characters in the game. But what's interesting about it is that Coda had never meant for these games to go public. One of the things that Davey talks about is he says he's created probably around 100 games and he just sort of keeps them. He doesn't do anything with them. He said at one point he renamed his recycling bin folder to important games folder or something.
Wow. Yeah.
And so he has no like connection to these games once he's finished them. Davey often says he thinks that games that he's finished are dead. He thinks Coda believes games that he's finished are dead, or he treats them as such. And it's just because not only does he have such an interesting take on gaming, he does things that no one else really does. Like there's one game that he's created where you can only walk backwards. Can't walk forwards. And then he plays, he put some text up on walls and you read this story of a woman who is walking backwards, but as she walks backwards, she can no longer see her future. Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
philosophical.
It's just, philosophical, weird stuff. And then as I was saying, the chat feature, because he had never meant to release these games, the chat is sort of what Coda was thinking at the time of creating this game.
Okay.
And so you'll be chatting, and one of the games, it's sort of like a puzzle action space thing. You're in space, and the game starts out. He's like, well, you'll want to play this game with your eyes closed. It's the only way to play this game. And so he has you close your eyes, and then that's what Coda had titled the game. But you need to close your eyes to play this game correctly. So you close your eyes and you can't see anything, and one of the options to say is, I'm blind, I can't see anything, what do I do? And then eventually you open your eyes and see the game. But you go, the solution to the puzzle is to go up and talk to this lady named Truth and tell her the truth. And the correct answer that Coda had chosen was, I don't know if I can keep doing this, and stuff like that. And then the next game immediately the next game that he begins creating is this conversation that you have with an entity that's leading you somewhere, and you're just walking across these platforms and having a conversation. And it's such an in-depth chat system. It's one of those ones that reacts to what you're saying, not just, says the next thing after you say your thing. So you're having a conversation. You can choose all these different paths, but they're all something. I mean, they've all got Coda's strange sense of humor to it, but they all tell you something about the inside of him. And granted, I haven't finished watching the walkthrough of the game, but from what I've seen, it's such an amazing homage to Coda, this creator, and a look inside his creative mind, and it's such a unique experience, truly, because gaming in and of itself is so interactive. Even on the worst of days, that's the point of a game, is to interact with it. But when you're interacting with something that someone created for themselves and as a representation of their being, playing through that and seeing this is such a strangely surreal experience.
I mean, you're honestly like looking into someone's mind. Like you're looking into who that person is, because they weren't making that for anyone but themselves. And so when you're making something that you think no one will ever lay eyes on this, you write and you create without any thought of judgment or embarrassment or anything. You just create to create, and that is the most purest form of like who a person is.
I think there are very few artists out there who, create to create, and you don't see it that often. I think a good example of that would be Edgar Allan Poe. A lot of his work was discovered posthumously.
That's true.
As well as Vincent van Gogh.
I was about to say Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah. People who were not particularly appreciated in their time, but afterwards are regarded as true, like, I don't know, like,
I wonder,
pioneers.
Yeah, pioneers, true, like, genius and like very creative minds. And I wonder if that's because they didn't have this spotlight, because they never believed that they would really get anywhere, even though they tried to. And they hit this point of like, okay, this is just where I am. This is who I am, and I won't create anymore. I'll just create what I want to create at this point. Like I'm not getting anywhere. I want to keep creating. And I wonder if that's what made their works like so great. Like it was without judgment, embarrassment, or the idea of what other people would think of them or of what they created, without the fear of being misunderstood or hated for what they created. Like,
yeah, and it's that pure sense of creational self that you see in these works by Coda.
Yeah,
and there was a point in time when I thought I was going to be a games developer, like what they're doing. At this point in time, I mean, I guess I could switch and do that. And seeing this pure form of creation really makes me harken back to those days when I was like, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
This is what I'm gonna do. And it's just that fire that's lit inside of me of like wanting to create and wanting to make something, create for the sole purpose of creation itself.
But and I don't mean to get off topic, but our society, like just our generation is so messed up. Our whole psyche and being is revolved around what other people think of us and how people perceive us. Like we were just joking about that. Like, don't perceive me. Like
yeah, between episodes.
That's our whole like. That's who we are. And so like I'm thinking here, like I do like little art projects on the side, and I don't make those for me. I make those so I can be like, hey, look, I made a thing, like to show somebody else. I want to create, to just create, and not like I want to show people, but like not fear what people think or not try to impress people, like just to make something.
Yeah, I think that's a problem with topic. No, it's fine. I think that's a problem with a lot of creators nowadays. Is because of the publicity of creators and what the public views a creator as has changed so vastly in the past 100 years that it's caused such a disconnect between creationism and the idea of creating art and generating art at its most basic raw form versus creating art for people to view you highly, to bring yourself up. And I think that's a big problem. Not to say that there isn't value in showing your art. No. There's value in community and art community. Being surrounded by creative people is extremely important, I would say. Not to say that, well, I mean, too many thoughts.
I know there's so much.
Too many thoughts. Let me go one at a time. Not to say that like you can't create art by yourself, but it is much more difficult and much more, I would say, mentally tasking than creating art within a community. I know one of the best things to happen to me was to find the community that we work with and the filmmakers that we work with and the people around us that we know and create with. And it's been so beneficial for my creative mind. Even just this podcast, like being with you and having someone to talk through creating with is so beneficial for my creative mind. that like I don't think I can recommend it highly enough. A lot of people talk about, well, is going to college for art or for filmmaking worth it? I say absolutely.
Oh yeah, 100%.
If nothing else, just for the community that you find.
Just to meet the people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what, you know, the work is nowadays anyways, is finding people and knowing people who know people to get you into
See,
things.
but I don't want to say it's just that. I mean, because everybody tells you need to network, but it's not just networking. It's actually having a community. It's being around the people who are doing the thing that you say you want to do. Like, and it's so inspiring to watch other people do the things that they love to do and love creating. It's a great thing.
Yeah. I say we move on to some recommendations.
We barely talked about why yours was biographical. I guess we did.
It's just that view into his psyche, you know?
Yeah.
To be fair,
I guess there's not much more to say about it. I mean, that's like literally the truest form of like a biography, like of someone's story. Like, is it an autobiography? Because they made it.
I don't know if it directly qualifies as that because it was compiled by
somebody
Davey.
else, and he narrated it.
He narrated it, so it's a biography. I think the games could be considered autobiographical.
Okay.
But the game, the beginner's guide, is a biography.
So you can say that it was influenced by Davey and his perception of who Coda was.
Yeah, because he's narrating and telling you about Coda during the story, and he's giving you his specific interpretations of what these things may mean.
So you're right. Yeah, biographical.
So, but yeah, let's move on to some recommendations.
Okay. I had so many movies. I had a list of movies that I wanted to talk about. I've realized that I watch a lot of biographical stuff, which is strange to say. But another movie that I really enjoyed was Sully.
With Tom Hanks.
With Tom Hanks. I'm going to have to look up the name of the flight. Give me 1 second.
When?
I got it. Okay. I don't have it. Okay. U.S. Airways Flight 1549. It's the story of the pilot and the co-pilot. I guess the pilot. It's Tom Hanks who plays the captain, Sully Sullenberg. Yep, Sullenberg. And what happened? He's pilot of a plane. It tells the story of this flight 1549 having double engine failure and having to land in the Hudson River. And then it goes into the whole court proceedings of, did he have to land in the Hudson? Did he risk the lives? I think it was 84 or something like that lives, maybe more than that, 100 and something lives. Did he need to land in the Hudson? Could he have done something safer? And it goes through all of that. And it tells how he is feeling and how he is reacting mentally and emotionally after being in this life-threatening incident and being the one responsible for all of these other lives on the plane. It's very interesting. It's a very powerful movie.
Mm-hmm. I just like Tom Hanks.
I love Tom Hanks. I love Tom Hanks.
So great. So great. I'm going to recommend... I'm having difficulty between two. I don't think one technically qualifies as a biography, but I'm going to name it anyways.
Do both.
I liked The Father.
Okay.
Did you see The Father?
Nope.
It's the one with...
Who, Anthony Hopkins?
Anthony Hopkins. I never remember his last name. Never remember it. Brilliant actor. It's a story about, it's loosely based on the events of the director's father succumbing to Alzheimer's.
So biographical?
I would say, but it's not in the typical sense where it's like, ooh, biographical. I mean, it's loosely based.
Yeah, I think even loosely based like qualifies as biographical. You're using somebody else's story.
Yeah. Okay, well, I really enjoyed The Father. It's this story of, it tells the father as...
Say the father again.
It is the story of this father, who is succumbing to Alzheimer's, and it's a look again once inside of the psyche of this main character as he's succumbing to Alzheimer's, and it's such a wild ride. And are you counting how many times I've said father?
No.
Oh, it looked like you were counting on your fingers how many times I said father.
I wanted to say something else, but I really don't want to cut you off. I'll say it after. Go ahead.
You're looking through his eyes as what happens around him. And it's a brutally heart-wrenching story, and seeing it, him devolve until the very end. One of the most...
I don't think I could watch it.
Did he? I think he won Best Actor for...
I think you're right. I think he
did.
did.
I think he won the Oscar for Best Actor for his performance in it. Because, dear God, by the end, it's just so difficult to watch. Chemically, I don't think I can cry anymore because of all of the medications my doctor has prescribed me for anxiety and depression. But that's the closest I've gotten in a long time.
I honestly don't. I've had family members struggle with dementia and Alzheimer's, and so I personally don't think I could get through it. I don't even want to attempt to. But it sounds like it went the Oscars, the Academy Awards. I know it won awards. So it's obviously a great film.
Yeah, but I don't know if it completely counts as a biography film. So my backup for that is The Courier, which is another Benedict Cumberbatch film.
Benedict Cumberbatch!
It's the story of a businessman during the Red Scare in England. What are you doing?
Still in England.
Yeah.
This man, he's just in all of the wars.
All of
the problems.
But it's the story of him as he is a spy and is transferring information from a spy in Russia to the MI6.
Oh, this movie, he's actually a spy.
Yes. And
Look
it's
at him
his
moving up in
story
the world.
as he eventually, these things happen to him. I don't want to spoil anything. It was really good. Okay. I enjoyed it. I love Benedict Cumberbatch. I think
We need a name for him. Switch the letters.
Benedict Bumberbatch?
How do you do it so quickly? Benedict Bumberbatch?
Benedict Bumberbatch.
Okay. That's what he will... Hear the two.
Hear ye.
Here... What's the word?
From here on out?
From, I guess... Here too, known as here though.
Thierho.
I guess just from now on, he's known as Benedict Bumberbatch.
All right, Benedict. Thank you for joining us on this intellectual journey. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Bye.
Media for the Intellectually Impoverished is produced by Trey Taylor Smith and Miranda Randy Zapes.
Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at MFTII Podcast, or email us at mftiipodcast@gmail.com.
That's MFT, 2 Eyes, Podcast. Thanks for listening.